For decades, we've all had this picture in our heads, right? The friendly robot butler, walking around, making our lives easier. But what if I told you that entire dream is hitting a wall? A hard wall, made of physics and philosophy. Today we're going to talk about something completely different. A vision that's frankly way more epic for the robot that's actually going to end up in your home. Okay, let's get into it.
It all kicks off with this kind of weird question. What in the world does something like Google Translate have to do with a physical machine, say, folding your laundry? As it turns out, pretty much everything. And that connection, that's the key to understanding both the amazing promise and the big failure of robotics today.
So to really get this, we first have to wrap our heads around how modern AI actually, thinks. And the big idea, the secret sauce, is that it basically treats every single problem we give it as a simple act of translation. Now, the techie name for this is the sequence-to-sequence model, or seek-to-seek for short. All it really is a system with three parts: an encoder that reads the input, a decoder that writes the output, and then this really cool mathematical idea in the middle called latent space. The best way to think about latent space is like a universal language of pure meaning, a bridge that can connect any two ideas no matter how different they seem. And here's where it gets kind of mind-bending. This translation idea applies to, almost anything you can think of. Asking a question, that's just translating the idea of "I don't know" into "here's the answer." Writing computer code, that's translating your human intention into machine logic. Even just typing a vague idea into a chat window, that gets translated into organized, refined information. It's this whole everything is translation framework. But, and this is a huge but, for all its power, this elegant model of translation, it's not at all how our brains work. Not even close. And that little difference is where all the problems really start.
You see, the AI's translation model is what an engineer would call an open-loop system. It takes an input, it processes it, and it spits out an output. End of story. One and done. But your brain? No way. It's a closed-loop system. Every single thing you do immediately becomes the next input in this constant, super-fast feedback conversation with the world. I mean, think about picking up a glass of water. You're not just translating a command, you're in a real-time loop, correcting every tiny movement every millisecond. AI's one-way street is just way too slow and clunky for that.
And this quote just nails it, right? LLMs have basically hacked the top floor of our experience. The slow, deliberate thinking like planning and writing. But they've done it without ever building the basement, that lightning-fast, subconscious, physical feedback that lets us, walk without falling on our face. So you have this big software problem, but it turns into a total crisis the second you try to put that software into hardware. That dream of the sleek, 6-foot-tall humanoid robot, it isn't just failing because the AI isn't fast enough. It's failing because it's crashing head-first into the brutal, unforgiving laws of physics. And I mean, just look at the numbers here. It is brutal. Your body, your entire body, runs on about 100 watts of power. That's less than a bright light bulb. The most advanced humanoids we have today, they suck down anywhere from 500 over 2,000 watts. And even then, they can only run for a couple of hours. Think about it. Your biggest problem is finding your next meal. The robot's biggest problem is trying not to melt into a puddle. And this just creates a complete cascade of failures. Powerful computers generate a ton of heat, which is really hard to get rid of in a skinny robot body. Worse, about 40% of the robot's entire battery is spent just fighting gravity to stay upright. We call that the active stability tax. It's this vicious cycle. You add more battery to get more runtime, but that adds weight, which means you need bigger motors, which drains the battery faster. It is a physical dead end. So if the software model's wrong and the hardware model is basically impossible, what's the answer? Well, we need a radical shift in how we think about this. We need to throw out the whole playbook. We need to look up. Just ask yourself this. What if the entire problem with robotics has nothing to do with the robot and everything to do with the fact that it's standing on the floor? The moment you move the robot from the floor to the ceiling, the biggest problems just evaporate. First, gravity stops being your enemy and starts being your ally. The house itself is providing all the support, so that massive 40% stability tax, gone. Just like that. Second, the energy problem, solved. No more batteries. The robot is wired right into your home's electrical grid. We're talking unlimited power, unlimited runtime, 24/7. And third, and this is huge, you solve the thinking problem. The robot's brain doesn't need to be a hot, inefficient computer chip in its head anymore. It can be offloaded to a powerful cool server in your basement or at the edge of your neighborhood.
This finally gives us the raw speed we need for those real-time, closed feedback loops that biology has been using for millions of years.
So you see, this isn't a vision for a robot anymore. It's a vision for a new kind of home. It's an infrastructure-first approach, where the house itself actually becomes the robot. And this kicks off an absolutely incredible economic domino effect. So first, you install the rail. Then, instead of buying expensive appliances like a dishwasher or a vacuum cleaner, you just buy cheap little attachments. The arm provides the motor, the arm provides the intelligence for everything. Suddenly, the entire $100 billion appliance industry could be replaced by a much, much cheaper attachment industry.
Now, I know what you're probably thinking. This sounds crazy expensive, like a huge renovation. But here's the Trojan horse. In a lot of modern construction, especially in Europe and China, buildings are made from these big, precast concrete slabs. They're like giant Legos. Well, if you just cast the robot rail into those slabs at the factory, the cost becomes a rounding error in the building's total budget. It makes this whole futuristic vision surprisingly affordable.
But a vision this epic requires one last crucial component: a new social contract. Having a powerful machine operating on its own in our homes demands a completely different approach to safety, to liability, to everything.
And this brings us to the absolute first principle. The system can never, ever harm a person. Period. This means you need a multi-layered safety stack. You have radar that creates a virtual fence around people. You've joints that are physically designed to be weak and soft, to literally yield to a child's touch. You'd have a second watchdog AI whose only job is to monitor the main AI for safety. And if all else fails and the power cuts out, mechanical brakes lock the arm in place so it can't fall. What this all means is the robot arm is no longer a consumer electronic. It's not a toaster. Under the kinds of new regulations being developed in the EU and China, it would be treated like public infrastructure. Think of it more like an elevator in your home. And this means strict liability for the manufacturer, and yeah, just like your car, it'll probably require a mandatory annual inspection to make sure it's safe. Which leaves us with a final, really provocative question. As we start to build these homes that can actually think, should we regulate the conscious controller living inside them with the same seriousness we apply to an elevator? Or do we treat it with the same carelessness we apply to a simple toaster? The answer to that is going to define the safety and success of our entire domestic future.